afraid to ask. I should mention that back in 1902, gold was discovered here by a fellow named Felix Pedroni. And it was discovered up the valley a little ways. There's a little creek called Schist Creek. And apparently what he did is he went up Schist Creek without a gold pan back in 1902. And I'm just telling you the history of the area. It's not that funny, but if you want to laugh, go ahead.
That was an expression thing.
Well, that's an interesting point. I should mention that a lot of expressions stem from gold mining. And as we go through this, you might look at me with some degree of incredulity, that word, and you'll say, no, this is too incredible. I don't know if the expression really started here, but a lot of expressions started with gold mining, one of which is flash in the pan. Have you heard that expression? The mother lode. Somebody strikes a mother lode, they get a, real quick windfall. Or the term flash in the pan. I think I just said that, didn't I? Yeah. But see, I'm doing this for this camera over here. And I want to buy a copy of that when you're done. The area right in front of the dredge is called the molehill. That's the part that the dredge digs up, okay? Carries it inside and stacks it in the big tailing pile behind it after it takes the gold out. That's called the mountain. The term making a mountain out of a molehill starts in gold mining. How many of you guys knew that? That's because I didn't make it up till last week. And when you're in this line of business, you always come up with new expressions. So what happens is the buckets go around a continuous chain, scoop the dirt up, dump them inside what's called a trommel, where everything gets washed, the gravel, and everything smaller than the screening, which they classify it with, falls into what's called sluice boxes, and everything else goes out the back end. And all this is a big boat. It's a big ship that is 250 feet long, is 5 stories, weighs 1,065 tons, and worked from 1928 until 1959. It took out 7.5 million ounces of gold. When they started mining in 1928, gold was $20.67 an ounce. When they stopped in 1959, it was $35 an ounce. Okay, it was no longer economical in '59 to keep going, especially having taken 7.5 million ounces out already. Now it's economical now at 400 and I think Hong Kong closed at 441.15 on Friday. So that'd be $3,497,368,425.15.
You had that old calculated up.
More or less. Okay. I would never unintentionally mislead you guys. You should know that about me. Okay. And you're probably wondering, why do we have these hard hats on? Because I'm going to explain that as soon as we're on the dredge and it's too late for you to turn around and leave. Each bucket weighs 1,850 pounds. They're made out of manganese steel. They hold 6 cubic feet of dirt per bucket. There's 27 cubic feet in cubic yards, but you already knew that.
You don't use that yet, do you?
No. And this would flew 6,000 cubic yards a day, okay? And there's, as you know, there's 4,032 square yards in an acre. So for every yard that you go deep, that's 4,000 cubic yards. So if you look at the tailing pile, and you can look at that and say, well, that's 30 feet. That means it's 10 yards deep. Now the gravel is worth more than the gold was back when they started mining. That's just an indication of how our value systems have changed over the years. We'll go on board, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them as we go.
One question.
You know, this is quite an engineering feat. There was a young engineer in Indiana that looked east, and he saw a star in the east, and he followed it, and he ended up in a town called Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Oh, near us.
Right near us.
Okay. And he had 3 wise men with him that were, structural engineers, and they're the ones that put all this together. We celebrate that every, like December, we give each other presents and stuff. And it's comforting to see the rest of the country doing the same thing. Now, this ship was built before welding was an industrial art, and that means that they had to put it together with hot round head rivets. So you can see all the rivets on the decks and on the digging ladder all over the place. And people say, John, you're in the tourism industry, but really, how do you make your money? And I say, simple, I have them wear hard hats. When we get on the dredge, if you bump your hard hat on anything inside that's painted red, you got to pay me $2. Okay? Right. No, if your hard hat hits the deck, it's a $5 bill. And if your hard hat goes in the pond, you owe me $10. Okay?
Take credit cards?
I'll take credit cards. If you look overhead here, No, don't go up that ladder. Then
Come back down.
I'd end up for it probably. Then I'd
No,
have to pay
then I
someone
can go up
back.
and come down.
This is what they used to replace the buckets. What they do is they pull the pins between the buckets whenever they got worn down, and like you can see, they're all numbered. And that was for their maintenance program, to know how much time each bucket had on it, because they're only good for about 3 seasons before they were scrapped. And they have lips riveted onto the front of them so they can dig through the gravel and the dirt. And the bedrock here is called a decomposed bedrock schista. Okay, that's where the good pay is. You've got to get into the schista in order to get your good pay dirt up into your trommels. Okay. If you don't get into the schista, you won't get schista when you come to do your cleanups with your cleanup crew, and that's the problem. If you don't get the schista, you get nothing. Okay. Now, as the buckets go around like that, this digging ladder can go up and down. You guys got to be awake for these tours. They go up and down, and they can dig to a depth of 35 feet. All right, and that little white thing going up the side, that's a depth. It's called a winch man, who operates up here. Full of shit. Yeah, if the buckets are full of shit or not. Thank you for that. I'll write that down on my next tour. Now, behind here, you can see the winch sides in the front and both sides in the back. And these winch cables would go out and they'd bury an old timber or a bucket and they'd choke the cable around it and they'd bury that. And that's called a dead man. It's like an anchor they winch off of. So those are the winch spools. This is the winch deck, and the winch room is upstairs. So one man, believe it or not, could clutch all the winches at the same time. Now we'll go through here. 150 horsepower General Electric. And the whole ship is powered by GE motors, all electric. It drew 406 kilowatts and had a total connected load of 424 horsepower.
Are you using V-belts?
Sir? Flat belts.
V-belts. Oh, flat belts.
Yes, sir. Flat belts around this flywheel for the buckets, and you'll see the gear reduction upstairs. This morning I got a phone call from Nancy Reagan's astrologist, and she said...
It's going to be good. What is it?
No, she said, John, I know this is your first tour that you've ever done. No, she said small Bob, really, but she meant John. And she said, I know in your tour today you're going to say 2 little ones hang a hard right at the smokestack. And I said, what does that have to do with it? She goes, trust me. So this is the smokestack right over here. Apparently that has something to do with something in this tour, and I'm not sure yet what it is. Now I should mention too that in 1928, when General Electric sent their factory rep up here, the deckhand had his young 5-year-old on board with him, his little boy, and they're walking around calibrating all the motors, making sure everything was working. And they came down and they saw gold getting caught in the sluice boxes. They were standing down here. The GE man was working on this motor, and little boy pulled on his dad's pant leg and says, Daddy, Daddy, look, GE brings gold things to life. That was the modern, that is where the slogan came from, this dredge, back in 1928. So it's all electric. They burned coal. They ran coal into town. They built a power plant in Fairbanks and ran power lines out here.
John, is this disabled yet?
Why? Electric. It's all electric. No, electric. It's all electric. Everything was, a generator was built in Fairbanks and the power lines were run out.
Is that disabled now?
Yeah, yeah.
You don't use it.
No, this hasn't worked since 1959. Now we're going to, the head president of Bethlehem said, sir, of this Bethlehem shipbuilders, and said, sir, I understand how to build the ship, but I don't understand how to recover the gold. And the president said, son, how long have you worked for me? He says, over a year. He says, and you should know by now the schist rolls downhill. What you need to know is that on a sluice box, this slopes downwards, and they put a ripple in there. And what happens is as the material goes down the sluice boxes, it rolls, okay? And gold has a specific gravity of 19. It gets caught at the bottom of the roll, and the lighter stuff keeps rolling down, okay? So your gold gets caught here, your schist keeps rolling until it keeps going all the way out the sluice box and gets deposited back in the pond, okay? And then you sell the gravel nowadays. But back then, you didn't sell the gravel. Back then, it was there was no market for gravel because there was really nobody up here but the gold miners. But now we have a lot of other kind of people up here. And we've got a camera on, so I don't need to go into that.
He put us to work with Andy. He gave us shovels and a bat. If we didn't work, he would hit us with the bat.
Especially the shovel. What you're looking at here is the trommel. This is where everything gets washed. All right? What you have is a 65-foot long drum
Yeah, I
that
can see it.
rotates at 12.5 revolutions per minute. And if you follow human history, you know that's a lot of revolutions in the span of 1 minute. You've got 3/8 inch screen in the front, 1/2 inch in the middle, 2 sections, and 5/8 back here. All the water comes up through a series of pipes that go right up to the top of this trommel, and then it gets nozzled down on the rock as it's getting washed. Now, as the rocks get dumped in the front of this thing, and they come crashing and rocking and tumbling and rolling through here and getting washed, and everything smaller than those screens falls into those sluice boxes. When that little 5-year-old came around behind here with the GE man, he says, "Hey, look, dude, rock and roll."
Rock and roll.
The term rock and roll started on this dredge in 1928. And later that 5-year-old played for Buddy Holly. He was a bass guitar player in the 50s for him. You probably didn't know that, but you don't tell your friends that.
No, sure will.
I don't know, but he's working in a Tampa Bay Holiday Inn. He's like 65, I think, now. But if you're ever down in Tampa Bay, just ask the guy playing bass.
Ask for a senior citizen.
Yeah, I think it's him. Now, as the material falls down, it goes right back up. This is the tailing stacker worm gear, and what it does is raises and lowers that tailing stacker back there. I'm going to slip around this way, and we'll go up to
See,
the
the
winch
sailing
room
stacker.
for every winch spool down on the deck. So let's say one of your deckhands is down there yelling, "Give me a break." Then he can come up here and think, "Wait a minute, give me a break." That would be a good expression. And that's where it started, right here in Gold Dredge number 8. This is the brake. This is the clutch. Now, which brake and which clutch is it? This is your starboard bow dead man, all right? The way I remember, bow is in front of the ship, stern is the aft end of the ship. Your starboard is right, your port is left. The way I remember it, port has 4 letters, left has 4 letters, right has 5 letters, starboard has 5 letters. Come back here. You've got your port bow dead man over that way. So now you got both your cables shooting off this way. This is your gangplank, thing we walked in on. And this is a hydraulic giant, which can raise and lower and shoot water like a water cannon up against the cut. Your master clutch is in the middle. Master clutch back here, these are your stern dead men, and then your stern spuds, which are big, huge 35,000-pound anchors with a point on them that they let free fall, and they stick right into the schista, and then they can pivot off of that. Okay? And so let's say they're going to cut to the right, they drop their starboard spud, they'll go to the right, then if they want to swing back left, they drop the one on the left, they pull the one up on the right, and they swing back. So it's just a pivot point, okay? And that's how the dredge kept moving forward. Then when they got even with their cables, they'd cut them, and they'd run them farther up the valley or down the valley, depending on where they were headed.
You're not gonna ask questions after that.
No, I mean, are you saying that this thing moves forward? I thought they had slush buckets out there bringing it to them.
No, this whole thing just dug its own channel and closed it off behind it. And it would travel about a mile a year by 200, 110, 120 feet wide.
You say one man works all these?
One man worked all of these.
Yeah.
He was the
Will
winch
that
man,
be put in operation again?
not this one.
He never was the same.
What,
after he
beyond
quit.
repair?
No, for about 800,000, you could get it running.
800,000?
Yeah,
For you
yeah.
gold guys, it's no problem, 800,000.
No, it's chunk change. But
Chunk change.
The problem is, if you got it running, and you went from here to the property line,
Yeah.
so what? You got it running, you spent 800,000, you took 800,000 out of the ground, you broke
In other
even.
words, you haven't got enough ground to go
No.
through that.
The only way to operate one of these economical is you need years and years of reserves. And they had them back in 1920, they had the whole valley to work. And so this dredge and the Dredge 8 and Dredge 10 worked this whole valley for 30 years.
Way back there alongside the highway where we see all that
Dredge.
stone up where these.
This dredge did that.
The work came through there.
Now, did anybody notice my billboard over here on the New Steves Highway when you came in? The one violating the Lady Bird Johnson Act?
Oh, no, I didn't see that.
Oh, yeah. There's one violating the Lady Bird Johnson Act over here. Right across the street from that is a bunch of white rock, and that's a white quartz conglomerate. This dredge took 350,000 ounces out of a little 2-acre piece of ground. That was $20 an ounce. I mean, $7 million at $20 an ounce.
Isn't this a working gold mine anymore?
Yeah, the two operations that are working are right out in the front. The one right out
What are
beyond
you doing it with?
modern equipment. Yeah, if you look out this way, if you look over there, you see a big crane, drag line boom. They dig it up in front of us. That's an open pit just beyond these trees. It gets dug up out there. You can see the workings. There is no humidity. And it gets cold up here. It gets colder than, freezing. Yeah, it does.
They must drink a lot of whiskey out here during the winter months.
And that's one thing nice about Fairbanks. Somebody said, I understand that people in Fairbanks have 3 times the alcoholic rate of the country. That's right.
You know, you can actually keep
About
this
5% of the land.
That's as good as I read.
And so they really own the country, you know, and I think in some parts of America we refer to that as socialism, I think. But, you know, I don't know too many states on the eastern seaboard where the government owns 99% of the land.
Donald Trump.
Take 40 acres of land, government land, for $8. You know, in the time that I've been here talking to you, you could have gone over to that hill over there and gotten 40 acres of land for $8. So what? You got 40 acres of Fairbanks for $8. You don't own it. You own the subsurface mineral estate. You can use the surface for whatever you want to do. And but look at beyond that hill. There's another hill, and beyond that hill there's another hill, and beyond that hill is 500 miles and more hills till you get to the North Slope, where it's just yeah. Have you heard the term caribou migration?
Yeah.
When the ship is off center or not on the level, you have gold migration. And what it does is it goes down the sluice boxes because we've accelerated the particle velocity and shoots right back out the back. And the term caribou migration is just a simple, an oversimplification of losing gold in the sluice box. I thought that might interest you guys.
That's what we're paying for out here.
Yeah.
No wonder this
Is this abandoned, is this equipment all abandoned, and who took over?
I did.
You did?
And when I'm not doing tours, I'm doing dishes.
Oh.
See, I say, well, give me the bus groups. Give me the big tour at lunchtime.
283, 282.
You know, because
That bus group.
if I do the one at lunch, you know, really, for those that haven't had lunch, they're so hungry by the time I get them off the tour, they zip right up to the restaurant. And the other guys that have already eaten, they don't lose their appetite because they've already eaten before I gave the tour.
Say, you know, I can say that